The new Genshin Impact Anniversary rewards coming for the Nodcry version allow you to not only pick a free standard banner character of your choice, but they also allow you to pick a constellation for a limited 5-star that you already own for up to 4 different characters. Along with this, they introduced the level 100 mechanic that you're only able to take advantage of after receiving Constellation 7 and above 5-star characters, including standard characters, which further complicates the choice of who to pick for your standard banner selector and for your free constellation selector. So in this video, we're going to go through all of the available characters' early constellations to help you decide if you should pick one of them or just work your way to C6 standard characters so that you can start working to level 100 for your favorites. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. The 5.8 second half banners featuring Chaska and Mualani are upon us. If you're planning on spending on these or any future banners, let me recommend Loot Bar. I have been personally using Loot Bar for all of my top-ups for over a year, and I have spent thousands of dollars on my account. They are 100% safe, using currency exchange to get you discounts on the crystals that you were going to buy anyways. They have tens of thousands of 5-star reviews and excellent customer service. It is extremely easy to use. Just click the pack that you want, enter your UID as well as your region, press top up now, and you'll get your Genesis crystals in just a couple seconds. Officially minutes, but that only took a couple seconds. With lootbar.gg, you get up to 25% off, and if you join VIP, you get loads of free coupons, so you can save even more. New users will also be able to get a further 10% discount from clicking my link in the description, as well as an exclusive offer just for this channel with a $2 welcome. It is partnerships like these that will allow me to continue bringing the content that I do to you, as well as support my family of 5. And as I said, I've been using them unsponsored for over a year for all of my purchases. So whether you're buying for Genshin or for any other Hoyo games, make sure to click my link to support the channel and your wallet. Thanks again to Loot Bar for sponsoring the video. Man, that was a lot. And all in all, this is a pretty cool thing that Genshin is doing. They did it in the weirdest way possible with a lot of caveats and a lot of confusion, and there's still a lot of things that I really don't like about it. But all in all, I'm kind of getting excited about all of this stuff. After all, it is new, it is different, it is free, it is a shakeup, and I'm here for all of those things. It is kind of exciting, even though there were so many caveats that made me annoyed. I'm getting excited for it now. I guess the first question is, who should you pick from the standard banner selector? And the reality is, you should pick whichever one you are closest to getting Constellation 6 of, so that you can start working towards level 100 or at least level 95 for one of your favorite characters. Level 95 and 100 are looking like a pretty good upgrade. We'll make a whole video on who the best characters are to level 100. I'm hoping we can get a little bit more information, because right now it is very sparse for the exact information that we have. So I'm gonna make that video as late as possible and hope we get information. After all, there are a bunch of other videos, including this one, that we can make first. But yeah, just a couple things I wanted to note about level 100, because in this video I'm going to talk about how OP it is, and I'll basically say things like, even for the characters that have good constellation increases, it's possible that level 100 will be a bigger increase even for them. And the reason why that I say that is because it's not just level 100. It doesn't work the exact same way, at least as we know now, compared to other levels. Up to level 90, attack scalers would get less out of levels than HP scalers because of the base attack from the weapon, diluting the power of the base attack of the character. However, we know for a fact that going from 90 to 95 to 100, it is equal across the board for attack scalers and HP scalers. So that's something that we didn't know before that we know now that is very interesting. So if it's good to level up your Mualani to 100, it'll also be good to level up your skirt. On top of that, it says right here, their abilities will be enhanced. What does that mean? It might mean that talents will also increase, and that's what I think is the most likely. What I think is the most likely right now is that when you go to level 100, your talents will go up, possibly up to 3 more levels, because that is what's coded into the game. And 3 levels would be massive for any character, and that would put regular carries in line with big increases, such the likes that transformative reaction characters like Hyperbloom characters get already, based on the increase to the damage formula. So all in all, level 100 might actually be a pretty huge upgrade, and that's why I'm saying that for meta-wise, you're most likely just going to pick standard banner characters to work towards this. However, there's a lot of people that simp for the characters that we're going to talk about, so I still think that it's worth it to go through all of those increases. Plus, level 100, it might not be as big as we think. We don't know exactly how big it will be, but we do know how big the current constellations are, so again, that's why I think this video is valuable. And one final thing, I'm going to talk in the video about certain things being a huge damage increase, Hyper Bloom teams getting a 40% damage increase from level 100. This is not necessarily the case. It is completely possible that they totally adjust the formula and it's a much smaller increase. This is just what's currently in the beta, but it's not reliable like it usually is because level 100 was a complete surprise. This was not known about in the beta. And other things about level 100, such as the aforementioned base attack increase, was a total surprise and a total departure, so that they could do other total departures and total surprises and lower the increase of level 100. They could lower the talent level values. They could do anything. So level 100 might be broken. It might suck. We really don't know for sure yet. So just take what I say when I'm talking in the video. Sometimes I sound a bit sure that it's going to be a 40% damage increase, but it's not necessarily going to be the case. It could absolutely change, and we will update that in a future video. Level 100 is going to be good, and the standard banner characters, they have been truly power crept out of the meta. All of them, to be honest. I guess Mona does have a use on Skirk teams, especially at Constellation 4. So you could argue that that one has some meta value. You could pick up a Constellation 0 Diluc if you really want to do Diluc Plunge. For Diluc Plunge to be amazing, you do want to work towards C2 Shenhe and C2 Silali, especially C2 Silali, but both of them are very impactful, and that is much more worth it than Diluc Cons. And if you have, like a favorite character that you really just want to use, then you can go for them. Sure, people are going to say that Jean has some uses on Farina teams. Keqing has Aggravate, Tighnari has Spread and Hyper Bloom, and Dia has some defensive utility, and Mizuki has, I don't know what Mizuki has. People are going to say that they have those uses, and they do, but that was like 2 years ago when these characters were usually not the premium option at the time, but they were pretty good. Now they are pretty bad. If you try and make a Tighnari Spread team and try and use it to clear Stygian Onslaught, you are not going to do it unless you are, I don't know who you are, maybe a C6 Tighnari owner. I'm thinking about activating my C6 Tighnari and testing it and making a Tighnari guide. Kind of excited for that. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments. But as an early carry, these are all of these characters really only worth getting if you like them, except for maybe Mona. If you don't have a good option for Skirk as the 4th slot, I think Mona might actually be a real choice here. Other than that, just work towards whoever is going to get you towards C6 and start getting you some Masterless Star Glitter so you can get 95, level 100, etc. For the limited characters, it is a bit more interesting. However, I will preface this by saying choosing a constellation out of any of these characters that's not a standard banner working your way towards level 100 is technically throwing meta-wise. So if you're wondering, should I pull C1 Hu Tao or should I get C1 Hu Tao for free? If you love Hu Tao, you should absolutely do that. It's a great quality of life. It's a 15+% damage increase, but it's not going to be nearly as big as reaching level 95 or 100 for your Hyper Bloom carry or for your Flynn's, or your Hyper Bloom trigger, not your Hyper Bloom carry, or probably even some other characters that we'll talk about in a future video. So yeah, unless you're a really dedicated Hu Tao main, and the same goes for all of these characters, it's better to just go for the level 100 stuff. But yes, Hu Tao is worth it if you're a Hu Tao main. Same with Wanderer. His C1 gives him around a 10% team increase, and C2 around a 25% increase from C0. This is of course for Wanderer hyper carry. These will be smaller increases if you're using Wanderer Escoffier wheelchair, Wanderer double Hydro wheelchair, then you will get smaller team increases. If you are actually a Wanderer main, this is a win. Same with Hu Tao. Getting his C1 and C2 are good. And I say C1 and C2 because maybe you already have C1. You can only pick each 5-star one time out of the 4 times. Then maybe next year you can do it again. Oh, I will finally say about Wanderer, he does also have good other constellations up to C6. So, you know, if you're truly a Wanderer main, continuing to pick Wanderer does have some value, unlike Hu Tao, who pretty much caps out at C1. Ayaka, her C2 is good, her C1 is bad, so careful about that, and her C2 is around a 10% team damage increase when it all hits. So if you're fighting a boss, it's a pretty solid increase, not like it makes her crazy broken. I think a lot of casual players have the idea that constellations are really big and they're going to make your character way more strong, but a 10% increase, this is the equivalent of getting, you know, 3 artifact upgrades for your Ayaka. It's not like, it's good, but it's not crazy. And on top of that, like, it does miss, right? Because it creates the 2 additional thingies on the side, and so that can miss. But against, you know, boss enemies, it should hit. Nilou, C1, I would say, so I'm going to move Nilou up. These aren't ordered, by the way, because Laoma Nilou is going to be real. I would still say it's a priority to level 100, but it's still going to, it's at least going to be increased. You're probably, should you work towards 4 standard banner 5 stars? I don't know, but maybe you save it for next year and you get another 14% team DPS increase next year. I don't know. I will say it's not worth wishing for Nilou just so you can get the C1 increase. It's mostly quality of life. So just throwing that out there. So no one wishes for these characters so that they can activate their constellation. But you know, if Laoma Nilou is doing 95k DPS, you know, her C1, maybe it pushes 100, her C2, now we're pushing 110. That's pretty good. However, activating your Hydro carry level 100, so your Kokomi maybe level 100, or your Hyper Bloom trigger level 100, that might go from 100k to 140k. So sure, this is a nice upgrade, but versus a level 100 character, we're competing with a 40% team DPS increase. So just be careful with that. It's probably still more worth it just to go for standard banner characters working way up to C6. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I really need to drill it into your head. Okay. Klee has a really bad C1, but C2 gives a defense reduction for all your characters, making her a decent support. She's already kind of a cope pyro option for overloaded teams as overloaded carries, namely Keqing, not Keqing, namely Chlorand and Varesa. But C2, from what I have gathered, it makes her the second best option as a pyro, except for Moika, only around 7% worse than Moika on Chlorand and Varesa team. I'm trying to get this fact checked right now. If I'm wrong, I'll link it in the comments. I think it's around this. You know, the other pyro options are nothing crazy. They're Bennett, which is about 9% worse than Moika. So this makes her just very slightly better than Bennett for Varesa teams and Chlorand team. Cool. Kokomi, C1 is a solid increase, both quality of life and damage, and she has an okay C2. Again, the best use of Kokomi right now is going to be on Nilou Bloom teams, and working towards level 100 Kokomi is going to be much bigger than getting her Constellation 1 or 2. Ganyu, C1 gives her a 4% team-wide damage increase for her Escoffier team, and she has a bad C2, so there you go. Mona can be a Cope, Mulanni, and Arle character at C1. I say Cope because just like other options are better, but it technically does work. And then she is a premium Skirk option at Constellation 4. So the nice part about picking Mona as a standard banner character is that if you do have Skirk, you're working towards a premium Skirk option. So you could pick Mona and then pick her again, and then you're getting close to C6, which is going to work towards level 100, and then maybe you level 100 your Skirk if you really care about Skirk like that. We'll see if level 100 Skirk is anywhere near as worth it as level 100 on transformative reaction stuff, but pretty cool. Mona doing double duty there. Yai has an interesting Constellation 1. It gives her a big energy refund, which really matters for her off-field, which gives her a pretty big damage increase of around 15% damage if she's being used off-field, and basically no increase if you're using her as an on-fielder. And then C2, assuming that on-fielder uses Fischl, which I will say doesn't always happen, especially these days in overloaded teams. So I actually think this might be a bit outdated. This is assuming, this 0% is assuming you're running Fischl as an off-fielder, but you're probably running, if you're running Yai as an on-field, you're probably doing Moika off-field and probably Auroron as the off-field Electro, and then Chevreuse. So that's not as much energy refund as Fischl, so I could see this being a bit bigger of an increase for Yai. And then her C2 is a pretty big personal damage increase. It's 15% coming from 0 or 30 total percent coming from 15. So Yai's got a pretty good Constellations 1 and 2, but she is a fairly underwhelming character at Constellation 0. So although these are quite good constellations, don't expect your Yai to just be doing crazy damage. I went with personal damage instead of team increase because it's harder to calculate team increase on a character that's, you know, used on a bunch of different teams. Shenhe is not a useless C1. She has a very nice quality of life for front loading energy for Stygian Onslaught. It's also nice for Skirk because sometimes Skirk uses her burst mode into her normal attack mode, and then using both Shenhe's hold and tap E while also creating more energy buffs Skirk's burst mode and her normal mode, which is, a little bit of a bigger buff. It doesn't give more quills, but it does give the buff to both, which is kind of nice. And then her C2 is like a 5% team damage increase, which considering, Skirk damage is so high, 5% is not bad. This was actually with Ayaka, but I think it should be about the same for Skirk. I think the buffs apply in the same way. All in all, not terrible. If you like Shenhe, like me, this is not terrible. Ito, quality of life from Constellation 1 makes his combos easier and a small damage increase. And then 9% increase from C2. It's a decent upgrade. Most of his real Ito teams are close to hyper carry teams. So this is around the overall team damage increase you're going to be doing. Ito's cons are interesting because they're really good for a hyper carry. And this is the same with Tighnari. They're both basically the same situation. They're a small increase from C1 and a bigger increase from C2. If you're using them as a driver, well, Tighnari is a Hyperbloom driver and Ayato, Escoffier driver kind of thing, or Farina Yelan or whatever, then it's kind of smaller increases to the overall team damage. But if you're using them as a hyper carry, all the teams are buffing them, Tighnari doesn't have quite the same kind of hyper carry teams, so maybe I'll remove that. But Ayato, if you're using Shalone and Bennett Farina, for example, just buffing Ayato, then this is more of a 6% or 8% and 20% increase, 7 and 20%, something like that. So, if you're a huge Ayato simp, you can feel good about that. Baiju's C1 is okay for front-loading energy for Stygian Onslaught, and his C2 is a fun quality of life that gives off-field Dendro application without ever having to switch him on. So overall, I don't think Baiju's going to be too used on too many teams. He's pretty good on Lauma Nilou teams, but again, that's going to be a team that benefits usually from level 100, most likely. So it's going to be better to save for that. But if you like Baiju, do and C6 and her C4 as well. But her DPS is so low at a baseline that, it's kind of cooked. However, you can feel good about picking Dia Constellations and, hey, coping and building DPS Dia as you work towards that Masterless Stella Fortuna. So kind of a win for Dia lovers that you can do the smart meta thing as well as the fun thing. Choose Constellations for your Dia. Xiao, I don't know how many people are using Xiao in the Stygian Onslaught, but if you are, his C1 is actually pretty good quality of life. Again, it lets you use his skill another time, which is more front-loaded energy. This used to be kind of bad because it only really works on the first rotation, but now with Stygian Onslaught, Constellations like this and the Shenhe one are actually kind of useful for Stygian Onslaught. So, would I get it for him? No. Again, the level 100 thing, but if you're a real Xiao simp, this is kind of nice. It's a nice quality of life. Childe also is an okay quality of life. He's really kind of bad these days. So even though it's a small damage increase, it's not as big of a cooldown reduction as you want. It still doesn't make his cooldowns super nice and easy. It's still annoying, but it's a nice quality of life. Sino's C1 is bait. It does increase his attack speed, but it doesn't really end up mattering very much. And his C2 is a reasonably good 10% team-wide damage increase if used on Hyperbloom teams. That's not bad. His Hyperbloom teams are getting better, so this is not bad. It's not going to be nearly as big as level 100ing him if he's your Hyperbloom trigger. You're going to want to focus on level 100ing him. So again, work towards that. I will also update the pinned comment if it turns out level 100 sucks for some reason, and then, this won't matter as much, but you can just go by what the actual increases are. But I'm pretty sure level 100 is going to be good. Eula has a pretty solid C1 increase, but since her base damage is low, it doesn't end up mattering all that much, and her C2 is pretty bad. Keqing doesn't really have any good upgrades until C6, which is overall, through all of her constellations, about a 9% team-wide damage increase from her C0. Not the biggest, but it's something, I guess. And again, same as Dia. It's just sad to see 9% when Dia is getting a 200% increase, right? Yoimiya, really bad C1 and a bad C2. I'm pissed. I kind of want to pick Yoimiya just because I love her, but yeah. And then Jean, her C2 is still worse than Shalone for Raiden, but it is closer. And then her C4 makes her about 10% worse than Bennett for Wanderer teams. Considering Wanderer already struggles a bit, you don't really want to lose that damage, but yeah. And then Chi-Chi, Albedo, and Diluc are just really bad all across the board. They don't really do anything. Like I said, for Diluc, you just want to focus on Sitlali and Shenyan cons. So yeah, I would say that this is good for simps of these characters, and you want to see, some of those constellations unlocked. But for meta, you know, level 100 is going to be the way to go. And if you are following by meta, you should be pulling standard banner characters. You get 4 constellation picks. You should be picking the 4 standard banner characters that get you closest to starting to get those masterless Stella Fortuna, except for maybe, I think, again, in the case of Hu Tao, because if you actually play Hu Tao, the quality of life, it's just so much more fun. But I have a feeling like even level 100 is going to be a bigger upgrade for Ayaka. Granted, I don't know that level 95 will be a bigger upgrade for Ayaka than her C1. I promise to go right back to this list when level 100 is fully revealed, and we'll compare this to make sure that I'm not wrong about this. But if we ignore level 100 for now, at least you have all this information, and you know that if level 100 works anywhere near the way it does right now in the beta, that none of these are worth it, and it's always better to go for level 100. So pretty clear now with the information that we have, and I will give you the most updated information as we get it. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you're going for. Check out our podcast if you want to see me rage about this whole setup here, which again, I've calmed down now, but it's linked down below. Make sure to subscribe, and if you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.